Happy Sunday, one and all. It is Sharla K coming live to you with another Forever Friends Academy live episode. How are you guys doing? Hope you are having a wonderful weekend. As always, I'm happy to be on here with you. Hopefully, I'll get some folks on with me tonight. Let me introduce myself just in case there's someone new, which you always know. I would absolutely love that. My name is Sharla Kornegay. I'm an author, recording artist, creator of Interact Coaching, as well as Forever Friends Academy, which is my group membership, subscription-based membership, private group coaching, where we talk about all relationship topics. We kind of do what we do here, but diving deeper because there's moments that we can, basically dive into specific areas of my members' lives. So definitely, if you hear anything that you like tonight and you want to dive in deeper, I do coaching for individuals as well as couples and familial family, relationships as well. So definitely click the link on my bio if you're in Instagram, and if you are on any of the other platforms, the link is in the description. So welcome to my podcast. If you are new tonight, I'm glad that you came upon my little corner of the internet, and hopefully you hear something that you can apply to your relationships. I just mainly do these live chats because I think, I think more than think, I know that our relationships are literally the heartbeat of everything that we do here and in life. And so I like to open up conversations and, prayerfully everyone feels safe when they come in here to do so. And more importantly, an authentic space to talk about relationship issues and provide principles, core, fundamental, godly principles that you can apply to your relationships. So that's what you can find here. If you want to check out any of my music, you can definitely just Google or go on any of your favorite music platforms and type in Sharla K. That is Sharla with an S. I hear a lot of people say that they're used to hearing that name, with a C. So it is with a S, Sharla space K. And peruse my music catalog. I am definitely getting my ideas and trying to put all my ducks in a row to get you guys some new music coming your way. So we'll see. But the Christmas season is quickly approaching. So I did release a Christmas album last year. So feel free. For those of you who are already in the Christmas holiday cheer to play. Hopefully I can, become a Christmas classic in your home. So enough about me. I see I have someone here already. Imagine Van Gogh, how are you? Thank you for popping in here as, usual whenever I see you. Thank you so much. So we're going to get into the scenario for tonight. Tonight is what I like to call Sunday relationship scenarios, where I present a scenario to you guys. And then we get to kind of pick the scenario apart, not be emotionally compromised by it because, it's not our issue, right? So I started doing this with some of my, couple clients, and I found it to be very useful because everyone knows, right? When you're in it, it's hard. It's challenging because you can easily become emotionally compromised depending on what the scenario is, right? So if we can kind of jump out of ourselves and try to extract some of the truths and principles from these scenarios that I give, I just figured it's a nice, safe way to learn and grow. So tonight, I actually have two scenarios for you guys. The first one is actually an extension from the last live chat that I had, where we were talking about standing in the gap. And I asked the question, in what way are you willing to stand in the gap for those that you love, right? And so I'll present that scenario first, and then we'll see if we have enough time for the second scenario. So the first scenario is basically we have a couple who, in this scenario, they actually work together. And the way that they met was that the woman in the scenario basically came in as like a project manager to handle a specific portfolio in the company that the gentleman works for. They hit it off. Great. It's been, let's say, a couple of months that they've been working on this project together. So it's now time for where they are supposed to present certain things to the stakeholders or the people who are invested in the project that they're working on. And in a nutshell, basically, it doesn't go so well because there are certain results that they did not provide, whether it was they missed certain deadlines or certain things weren't really up to the standard of the expectations of the company that they were working with. So the head of the company who was in charge of this project, they came together, had a meeting, and he basically went down, was pretty hard on her, basically. It was pretty hard saying, these are the expectations we had, this and that wasn't met, and we put you as the head and in charge. But as he is critiquing their overall job of what they were supposed to present, he starts to become a little bit demeaning to her, right? To say things like certain things that weren't done or doing it in a certain way was idiotic. And, I expected you to be more intelligent or more, have greater capacity. And that's why we brought you in to handle this. So in a nutshell, she basically takes what he's saying and he basically says that you are going to be removed from being the person who is going to head this project. So while this is going on, the gentleman that she is dating does not really say anything in regards to, the interaction that they're having. But at the end, he gives her some flowers at the end of the day, and he comes and I guess you can say console her, but also try to provide her with some things that he felt she could have said in the moment during the meeting. And so she basically gets really upset at him and says, I would have liked if you had all of this, wisdom to share in regards to how I could have handled when he started to demean me. I would have wished you would have, did that then instead of coming, instead of coming now and expressing this to me. And she basically says in the scenario that, I'm looking for a partner, someone who could stand in the gap, for me. And I don't feel like you did that. You didn't come to kind of cover me in that way. And so she has issue with that. And she's like, I don't know how I feel moving forward. And he basically says to her, what I'm doing right now and me coming to you now and speaking to you and giving you, some sage advice is my way of standing in the gap or covering you or presenting you with ways that you could handle that situation. It might have not been the way that you expected me to, and I don't feel that that was the appropriate time for me to say that because you were the one that they basically brought in to actually oversee us, even though we're working together. So that's the scenario. The scenario is basically she feels like him not saying anything during the time of the meeting and stepping up in that way is not him coming to her aid, standing in the gap for her. And he feels like, me coming to give you the flowers, console you, now giving you wisdom or sage, sage advice of how you can handle this is my way of covering you, is my way of standing in the gap. It might not be the way that you wanted it to happen, but it is me doing it. So let me know what you guys think in regards to the scenario. Let me know if you agree with the gentleman in the scenario or do you agree with the woman? And do you think, and I guess, I would love to know if somebody, because so many people, at least that I speak to, are kind of resistant of dating someone who they work with for this particular reason of how it can become complex working with someone and not wanting to get into, especially if you're working as intimately as they were, actually working on a project together, how it can get, a little complicated. So let me know what you guys think, and what I stated to the people who were on our other live chat of what standing in the gap means. It just means that, listen, if you have a partner that's down, I listened to a podcast today and I love the analogy. It was the wife who was giving this analogy, and she was saying that basically, just imagine if you're on a marathon, you both are running this marathon, and one partner gets winded and they're very thirsty. The other partner just, gets them water to kind of refresh them, and kind of like just basically helps support them or becomes the strength until they can recover. So that basically is what it means to stand in the gap. Of course, we can do that in many different ways, and we kind of went over that in the last video. So to get in detail, go to my YouTube channel, Forever Friends Academy, and definitely watch the previous video before this. So that's basically, it's a conflict in him feeling like he is doing that in the scenario that I gave you guys, to talk to her now and give her the gems of wisdom because he feels like this is the proper place to do it in. And she's like, no, that's not what it is for me. I think that if you were able to kind of like get in my corner, support, and present an argument, one, so that that person, when they are now raising up to become demeaning to me, that, there is, I guess, maybe something to put him in his place, or at least present an argument as to how we work together as a team in the best way possible to try to provide, the greatest outcome for the company. So let me know what you guys think. Hey, Emily, how are you? You just came in. I just put out a scenario asking everyone what they think about it. So let me know. I'll try to summarize it really quick for you. It's basically a couple that's working together. They've been working together on a project. The woman in the scenario was brought on by the company and hired to oversee the project. The gentleman that she is now in a relationship with is a part of that project. So in a nutshell, they basically miss a few deadlines. The expectations that were laid out for the project was not met in the most optimal way. So they are now in a meeting. In the meeting, the head of the company basically comes down really hard on her, says, such and such was missed deadline. Things were not met to our expectations, but he starts to become demeaning to her in the way that he states it, kind of say this was idiotic to do, and we basically brought you on thinking that you would have the capacity to do this, but clearly you don't, and basically removes her from the project. The gentleman that she is in the relationship with does not say anything. As when they're in the meeting, he doesn't say anything, but he does come to her later on in the evening, presents her some flowers, and then begins to kind of console her, as well as give her suggestions and advice of how she can, navigate now moving forward, but also if she's ever met in a situation like that, of how she can kind of handle it. She is highly frustrated and annoyed with him because she says, I wish that you could have packaged this, presented this during the meeting and not now. I wish you would have, stood in the gap for me then. I don't really feel like definitely didn't feel supported by you or protected in that moment. And he says, well, this right now of what I'm doing, coming to you right now, is I feel the best space to do it. I don't feel that in the meeting at our professional space was the best place to do it, but now is an example of me coming to support you and cover you and protect you in that way. So that's what the scenario is. And of course, let me know what your thoughts are. Hey, E, how are you? Let me know what your thoughts are. Do you agree with the man in the scenario? Or do you agree with the woman? Do you feel like there was a way that he could have polished it, that he could have presented where she could have felt like he was, supporting her, protecting her, etc.? Or do you agree with the gentleman in the scenario that this is his way of standing in the gap for her, of covering her, of protecting her in the appropriate environment? So let me know. Let me know what your thoughts are on this. I think it's one interesting because, like I said, they work together, and I know there are a lot of people who are like, "Don't date anybody you work with," because it just presents more opportunities. And I will agree with that. I think that in order for you to work, with your partner, you do have to have a certain amount of harmony in the relationship because there will be more opportunities for sure where conflict and all other kind of things can come up. So I do think you do have to be in a certain type of understanding space and almost calculate that ahead of time to kind of not let all of the different opportunities where conflict can come up get the best of you. So I have a response from Emily. She says, if I was that lady, I would like for my man to stand up for me, but at the same time, I don't want him to get fired, especially if the boss is mean. Okay, so she's like, definitely understand the emotion behind wanting to feel protected if someone is being demeaning, but at the same understand the reality is that I don't want you to get fired, right? I want you to keep your job. So maybe it's not the best time and place to say something. Okay, so I got one response so far. Understood. Yeah, I think every woman has like even though now, right, the conversation's different because I was going to say every woman wants to feel protected and secured in a relationship, and I do really believe that. But now with and you guys can let me know if you heard what Trump was saying in his speech, because that has kind of brought up the conversation about women, wanting to feel protected and things like that. And I've heard a lot of the feedback from a lot of the women who did not like what he stated, because the full statement, let me put it out there because I don't want someone to walk away being unclear about it. He was at a rally and he basically was saying that his campaign team was trying to suggest to him to not make a certain statement the way that he was, because women definitely don't like it, but they just said in general people don't like it, and he, in the statement they were talking about, was him saying that he is, going to protect women. And in this particular rally, he was saying that he was stating to his campaign team that, well, I am going to say that I'm going to protect women, whether they like it or not, And so, like I said, a lot of women were saying, well, oh, we're women, we don't need protection, which I don't really think that's true based on just the society and the system we live in, I think the whole point of government is to have certain rules and regulations to ensure the citizens' protection. So that's both men, women, children, etc., everyone, right? So I totally understand, what Emily's saying. Like, I definitely want to feel protected in that moment when someone is saying something to me, and they're saying it in a very demeaning and condescending way. And, not everybody is, there are people who are very sharp and they're quick on their toes. And I guess in that situation, you'd have to be, if for the man in that situation, you'd have to be someone who can kind of articulate words in a certain way where you're able to say and you're able to kind of, cover your partner, but in a very eloquent way to where it's not putting you, like what Emily's saying, in a position where now your job, right, your career is on the line. But not everybody has that, right? To be quick on their feet, to have the right articulation, to, you know, nice and very eloquently put that person in their place and kind of bring it back to a place where we can talk about resolutions. Not everybody has that, and then on top of that, just to take what Emily said, if you have a boss who is just, their personality is just one that is mean or negative, it won't even matter, right? So you have to take in all of those things into consideration to see what you articulate, what you say, how it's going to be received. So very, very, delicate situation for sure. Emily said, so it's almost like our incomes are being taken away. Okay, she's in her continued answer. She's like, well, if the lady's already being removed from the project, right? So she's going to have to move on to find another project to do, to maintain her income. Now, if he, right, is also going to be fired from a job, then right, and I love that you're thinking like that, and I'm always impressed by Emily because she's really young, and when she comes on here, she always answers in such a very holistic way, and not just thinking emotionally, but thinking principally, which I appreciate because that's the whole. That's my whole MO on this show is not being reactive based off of your emotions, but also principally thinking about, what is the best decision to make or what is the best action to take. So Emily said, did he say that he would protect women in and out of pocket way? Oh, okay. She's talking about what I said about Trump. I don't, well, just, I think, I don't think it was. However, I just think when you say Trump, they just come, that name for a lot of people just comes with a lot, and we can say it's just how he kind of moves about and articulates the things that he wants to say, as well as when he says it, what the media then does with it. I think people just have have whatever perception or whatever their beliefs about him in their mind. So I could say I don't think it was an out-of-pocket weight because I, again, can go back in my mind and say, yeah, women do need protection, and we are being protected right now. That's the whole point of having government. That's the whole point of making government services, police departments, firefighters, et cetera. The list goes on and on. That's the whole point of a government, is to ensure the safety and hopefully, prayerfully remain, encourage the peace in the community in all and globally with other countries, so that the citizens can remain in peace and live their lives. So I'm not. So to me, it wasn't in a in a out of pocket way. But then again, I'm not just thinking of it emotionally. I'm thinking of it principally. Like, yeah, no matter no matter whether they like that I say it or not, this is what I plan to do, or this is my conviction. So that's how I looked at it. But again, I think that takes going beyond the emotion of it and what mainstream television tells you about him. And it also it also takes going beyond whether his character just might not be, what people like. But regardless of if you like a person's personality or their disposition, if they're saying something that's truthful, then it's truthful, But again, that takes going beyond emotion and actually looking at it from a principle perspective. So Emily said, because I'm too busy to keep up with the political stuff, and good for you, because I honestly think it can become a rabbit hole. And if he was being too out of pocket, then that would be understandable why some people are mad. Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of people think, you know, that Trump says a lot of things that are out of pocket, and I think they probably would be right on a lot of ends. But at the end of the day, just that particular statement is just truthful. Yeah, I mean, if we deny that we need protection, then I mean, let's just take it in reality. If that statement was considered the truth, and let's just remove all the police out of our communities, and let's have all the men who, in their own conviction, who are part of our communities and a part of our lives, say, okay, well, the women don't need protection. So that would be an unfortunate, you know, an unfortunate, turn of events, because then things would occur where the reality of it that we do need protection would come to fruition, right? But I was just bringing that up because of, tonight's topic, and because of what Emily had said. And I just like that she was able to step out of being in the emotion of probably how the woman in the scenario felt in the moment, but to say, okay, wait, we got to think about this holistically. Like, you can still stand in the gap for me. You can still cover me. You can still protect me. You by what he is doing in the scenario, and not necessarily doing the way where we are putting our, the totality of our livelihood in the financial area up, at stake here. So that's why I was saying that. Right. And she said, right, Emily said, I'd want protection as a woman. Yeah, I think so. That's what I mean. Like, it's just ridiculous, and it's not just women. It's right. Like, the reason why we have certain government is to establish that, so that, again, our citizens can be safe and protected. So, but they're spinning it, of course, as news does, to make it seem like it was more of a condescending thing. So absolutely, I agree with you, Emily. I definitely want protection, and I know that I have it, and I'm okay with receiving it. Hello, good evening, Maya. Good evening. Oh my goodness, beautiful Shanice, how are you? So you guys, I put out a scenario, but you guys missed that. So I'm going to put out a second scenario before I hop off, and you guys can let me know your thoughts on this. But before I say this particular scenario, I'm going to pose a question to you guys, as well as make a statement. And this came from a conversation that I recently had with a beautiful, beautiful wife that I was talking to. And I had said the statement. I want you guys to think about this, because oftentimes on my show, and also when I'm coaching, I always tell people that to be in a relationship, or to have a relationship, is a privilege. It's not a right, right? And what I was talking about was intimate relationships, because clearly, relationships is at the center of everything that we do. And as I like to say, the heartbeat of everything that we build here in life. But to have intimate relationships, right? Especially in the context of relationships that are growing towards marriage, it's a privilege, because not everybody wants to get married, not everybody is going to get married, etc. So in this conversation that I was having with this beautiful young lady, I asked her the question. I said, do you think, no, well, I asked her two ways. I said, do you feel more exposed? And this particular young lady that I was speaking to is a believer. She's a believer in Christ, and she believes in God. And I told her, I asked her the statement. I said, do you feel the most exposed when it's just you and God? Or do you feel the most exposed when it's you, God, and your husband? and she'd give me an answer. And to make my statement a little bit more clearer, because of the response that I got from her, I said, let me ask you this way. Do you feel like you are able to identify your blind spots greater with just you and God by yourself alone? And when I mean you and God by yourself alone, I mean like, you having your own prayer time, that could mean a lot of different things for different people. But however it looks, whether you're reading your Bible, whether you're praying, just you and your own communion, and intimate time to connect to God, in that way. And so I said, do you feel like you can see your blind spots with just you and God by yourself, or you, God, and your husband, right? And when she started to answer the question, she was like, oh, definitely just me and God, because God knows me. He knows my ins in and outs. He just knows me greater than my husband. So I feel like when it's me and God, I can be totally myself. There's no expectations there or anything. And I asked her, I said, okay, answer that question again, but don't give me an answer that's very emotionally fueled, right? Like leading with your emotions. Give me the answer when you're thinking about it principally, right? Like, can you see your blind spot, which is you and God, or can you see your blind spots easier when it's you, God, and someone else, right? And so she looked at me and she was like, yeah, if it's principally, it's me, God, and someone else, right? And I'm bringing it up because I think often the reason why I state it's a privilege to be in a relationship is because we can hide. Like, it doesn't matter how vulnerable you feel you are. It doesn't matter how much you felt like you're doing the work on yourself, and you're communing with God and doing all the things to kind of like get yourself together and be the best person you are. Even when you do that work, when you put yourself in a combination with someone else, there's going to be something, many things that come up that you just could not see without that person being right there, And I thought of this not just in relationships that are healthy, that help you to grow, that bring out the best in you, but you guys can let me know, the ones who are on here, even some of the negative, toxic, bad relationships that we've been in, whether they're intimate relationships with a partner or just family relationships that aren't, they show you a lot about yourself and how you respond and how you process. And it's like you cannot, that part of you unless you are like, put in the situation with that other person, So if because sometimes I'll get, questions from people like, okay, well, why do you, a relationship is not necessary, and yeah, of course, when we're talking about like marriage in an intimate sense, no, definitely. There are people who will just make an oath to have their life where they're not even, even looking that way. Now, just relationships of building in life, yeah, you can't escape it, right? Because you're automatically put into a family. You need relationships when it comes to work. So yeah, there's no way to escape it. So you definitely are going to encounter it somewhere within your life. But when it comes to that intimate relationship, and as I was saying again, where they say, why is it so necessary for us to kind of like learn about it or talk about it or study or gain relationship skills? It's necessary because of the fact that the more intimate the relationship is, the more exposed you will be, right? And the more open it is to your advantage to remain open to see what that exposure is going to bring out in you, right? And the more intimate it is, the harder it is to kind of run away and escape from the necessary processes that need to occur. So definitely, that's what I'm putting out in this. I wanted to kind of like introduce that and put that out to you guys before I give you the second scenario to see what your thoughts are on it. But definitely, if you have any thoughts, let me know on some of the statements that I just made and what your thoughts are on that. And I see Maya just wrote something. She said, definitely the second one. We are the light of the world. With Jesus, husband equals more light. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you anymore. But, I'm sure, I don't know, I definitely have encountered the people who either if they're saying, I just have to trust God, I don't got to trust people, it might come in that way, or, so many different, as long as I'm in a relationship with God, I don't need to, be, as long as God knows what I'm doing, that's all that matters. It comes in so many different, ways where people can articulate and kind of, unfortunately, not appropriate correctly the importance and the necessity of it, and what a useful tool it is and resource in life to again expose ourselves to one another, right, to each other, so that we can see things that we just wouldn't have been able to see outside of the development of that relationship. So this is the second scenario before we hop off tonight, and let me know what your thoughts are on this. So we have a married couple, and they are basically, let's say they've been married for like 12 years, right? Let's get them in there. They've been married for 12 years. And as many married people know, even if you've done some a lot of marital counseling, or, couples therapies and things like that, you're different, when you go into the marriage, and you grow and you change. And so right now they have hit a spot where they're dealing with an issue that just always seems to come up. Just always seems to come up. And it does have to do with, the wife not feeling like she's seen or heard, or and therefore it translates to her not feeling protected by him. And he is not really understanding, because he's saying he is seeing her and he's presenting solutions to her. But because the solutions do not line up with the way that she's expecting for him to show up, then that's where the communication is, lines are not, clear, and it's not affording for them to come to a certain finite resolution to this issue that they're having, right? And so they're having another conversation and conflict about it, and the husband says, you know what, we're going to go back to therapy, right? So he makes the initiative to say that they're going to go back to therapy. And in that moment, she actually does feel seen, because she understands that something in what is going on in the relationship, for her, is like, you got it. You realize that it's come to this point, and that this issue is really something that is bothersome to me. So she's grateful. She's grateful that he finally says, okay, let's go to therapy, Now the issue that comes up is that he says basically that he doesn't want to talk about the issue or the problem until they get to their therapist. And for her, she's like, no, like, I still want to talk about this because it's going to bother me, and let's just say their therapy appointment is not until about maybe a week and a half, no more than 2 weeks out. And she's like, I'm going to grapple with this because I'm different from you. Like, you can go to work and go out with your friends and seem to be, fine and dandy and okay with, whatever issue that we're having. But for me, the process is different for me. It weighs a little bit heavier, and I grapple with it internally. And so I would like to talk about it. And he says, well, no, I don't want to talk about it because that's the whole point of why I say we need to go back to therapy, because we've been trying to talk about it and it hasn't been working. So we need a third party there, because once there's a third party there, it affords for us to interact and be maybe more conscious and be more thoughtful, and the words won't be weaponized. We'll be more careful about it when we're in front of that person. So I would rather just stay, and wait it out and present it when we're in front of our therapist, right? So that's the scenario. She thinks he's being, unreasonable, and that they can still talk about it, and then, even talk about it even more when they go to therapy. And he feels like she's being unreasonable. We're not understanding that the reason why we are, or at least the reason why he is presenting that they go to therapy, is because our conversing about it has been like a cyclical type of thing, and we haven't gotten anywhere clearly. So I think it would be best for us to wait until we are in front of our therapist to hash things out, because not only, again, will it cause us to filter our communication with each other in a certain way, but then we'll also have, right, the therapist there to help guide the conversation and present maybe things that both of us, we aren't seeing. So that's the scenario, folks. Who do you lean towards? You lean towards more so the woman in the scenario, and understanding what she is presenting, that she's going to be left to deal with this, and it seems a little bit, unfair, and that it's okay. He can just understand and kind of talk about it to a certain point, and then they can continue to talk about it in the therapist? Or do you agree with the husband in scenario who says, I think this is the best pathway for us to actually get to actual resolution, because we've tried, we've earnestly tried to communicate with each other and have not. And he feels like the communication that they do by themselves can cause more harm than good. And so he doesn't want that to continue to happen. So let's just do it in a space where we know that we have someone who is equipped to help both of us maybe see things that we're not seeing from both, right, from each other's angles. So, all right, so I have, Emily says, I think the lady should talk about her troubles in their therapy session to see what the therapist thinks. Okay. I mean, that's the whole reason to go to therapy, right? To talk about your troubles. Okay. So I got Emily. So far, one person agreeing with the man, I would believe, right? So that would be agreeing with the husband in this scenario, saying, let's go to therapy. That's the whole point, that we're having these issues that we have to hash out, and we have not embarked upon a solution that we can, create ourselves. So let's get another person involved who can hopefully, provide some resources, some different perspectives, some principles that we can use, to guide our conversation about this issue, and about this topic. Okay. I like that. See, Emily, so she's very wise beyond her years, guys. Emily's like a teen. So every time I see her answer, I'm like, oh my goodness. But I should know this because she tunes into my show. So yeah. For sure. But yeah, I agree with you, Emily. I'll wait for other responses, but I definitely agree with the gentleman in the scenario. And oftentimes, just on the other end as a coach, there are plenty times that I have asked my clients to not discuss certain things, like whether either I'm giving them maybe an exercise or homework to do, and I ask them to not discuss it with each other until they come to see me, for that very reasoning, right? Because it's the idea of what I brought up to you guys in the beginning, right? Where I asked the beautiful, the woman that I was talking to, like, do you feel like you can, you know, are you more exposed? Do you feel like you can see your blind spots with just you hashing it out within yourself, or bringing those issues to God? Or do you think that it's better? You'll have more acuity, you'll have more awareness, you'll get more clarity with you, God, and your husband, right? And principally, there's no way to kind of get around that. The fact is, no, yeah, you will get more clarity with you and another person. And so I think in this scenario, I think that's the principle that the husband is introducing or presenting as to his reasoning as to why he wants to wait until he's in the presence of the therapist to talk about the scenario. And it's interesting when I was thinking about presenting this topic to you guys. I think more and more now it's coming to where people are having a greater understanding, because I think a lot of times, especially in my experience of like coaching couples, oftentimes, I will see the husbands or the men that are in the sessions initially, right? The woman will come in sometimes almost persecuting, or judging her husband or her partner from thinking, from taking a while to kind of think and process and work things out within himself, and not kind of like talking about it right away, right? And I think, maybe that is a gender difference, right? Where women sometimes, and I don't like to say it in general, and I say this from a perspective where I'm the actual opposite. I'm not a woman who kind of like to just blurt things out and say things. I've grown. When I was younger, oh boy, that was a different story. I would say it right away, but I've grown, thankfully, to where I like to kind of let things marinate. I like to really, and I'm a thinker. That I am. I always have been since I was younger, a child, that I'm curious and I like to think about things. So I like to think about things from many different angles before I, make a statement, but it's not always that way. And from my experience, I've learned, and I've seen where, especially because just like in the woman that I present in this scenario, if there is an issue or conflict going on in a relationship, you more so see where the woman is like, no, we need to talk about it right now. Like, we need to deal with it right now, because I can't. It's going to consume, like all of me, unless we, hash it out and get it done with. Whereas the man, you literally see it as the way that I put it in the scenario, where it feels like, okay, he can kind of just go on and continue to do all the things that he's doing, because oftentimes they're thinking a lot about it. And don't get me wrong, I don't mean in a situation where, okay, you were thinking for months and months and years and we're not dealing with certain things. That's a different scenario. But, thinking before you speak or before you react or before you respond, that's just saged wisdom, because you don't want to say something that you really don't mean in the moment, and you can't take those words back. So I don't think that's a bad thing, but oftentimes that's that's what the initial coming in, where the wife or sometimes a lot of women in the scenarios, they'll be like, well, he's just not, he doesn't want to talk about it and things like that. And you will see as they come into the coaching session with me, that's why you want to go to someone who can kind of set up an environment, ask maybe some leading questions that they open up, and then they start talking about all these things. And, you start hearing a lot of different perspectives. Their wives start hearing a lot of different perspectives, and they're like, "Whoa, how is this? How is this even happening?" But that's the point, right? That's the point that okay, now we have the husband and the wife, but then now we have right either a therapist or a coach who is skilled in being able to help you get out of your one angle and perspective of how you were looking at the situation to now have right like what I like to say God's perspective, or maybe other people might say a bird's eye view, where you're higher than the issue, and then you can now look at it from so many different angles. And I always like to call it you can look at it from a selfless place, right? Rather than a selfish place of just looking at it from one point of view or one angle. So I agree definitely with the husband scenario. Now it's hard, it's challenging sometimes, yeah, for sure. I'm not going to say at all that it's not challenging. It definitely is challenging, and it's been challenging for a lot of the couples that I have coached. But it is definitely worthwhile and rewarding if you can have the discipline to do that. Because just like in the scenario where the husband says, I think, sometimes because this issue is so strong and this conflict continues on, it's a consistent thing coming up, and we're doing more harm to each other in the way that we're communicating with each other and not coming up with the issue. So I think it would be best to provide the space and then present it to someone, and know in an environment where we're not going to attack each other, because one, right, we both agreed to come in this space to work it out. So just the fact of that action alone is going to put us in a different space, a different emotional space, a different mentality that would then further facilitate, right, us being able to bring some resolve to this issue. So I have some more thoughts on this scenario. Maya says, I understand wanting to understand the problem, especially knowing that they'll still be communicating with the problem underlying. Okay. So she's saying she understands the wife's point of view. They may be on their way to a breakthrough in communication if they can show each other something different from what they've done previously. Okay. I like doing the work before the session so that we can go further. Okay, so now I think, and let me know, Maya, if I'm reading this right. You seem like you're with the wife in this scenario. I got Emily so far gave me her feedback. She's leans more towards the husband's mindset in this. Are you saying you're leaning more towards the wife because of what I read? Like she's saying, understanding wanting to speak about it because you'll be communicating with the problem underlying, and that they may get to a breakthrough in their communication if they can show each other something different than what they've been doing. Okay. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, guys. I was speaking too fast. She's still writing. She says, but I understand that he doesn't want more damage done. He knows his wife, though, so I am cautiously optimistic about them talking beforehand. Okay. But yes, I am with the wife. Okay. All right. So it's interesting. I got those. These are both two young ladies with different, one's on the husband's side and one is leaning more towards the wife. Now, what I would say, I love what you said, Maya, because I think that's a good point, because it comes up a lot when I coach couples where you're saying if you don't talk about the problem, you're still going to have to communicate with each other on a daily basis, just even if it's about like daily household dynamics or duties or things that you have. So what Maya's bringing up is well, we're going to be communicating anyway. And if we communicate and there's an underlying problem, then it might just cause, is what I'm getting from her, more dissension. But what I would say, which I totally understand, because we definitely have talked to couples about that. But what I would say is different in this scenario. Why? Because I can see how that would cause damage, in a relationship. Still going about your daily, duties and business while there's a underlying, problem, hovering in the air. But I think this one is different because he has already made an initiation and a step to say that we're not ignoring this problem. We are going to go to therapy and talk about this problem. So even though there's an underlying problem, there has already been an action, right? A step taking to say, okay, I'm committed to hashing this out, but I want to hash it out in the best way. So I think that's the only part that I think is different, in this scenario where waiting and providing the space, you know, it wouldn't do damage in that way. But I can understand you're optimistic. your optimism about it. You're like, well, we could just try it out. We could just keep on talking, and maybe we can stumble upon, us coming up with our own resolution. I get that. I think the best way I can answer that one, and hey, oh my goodness, Mel, how are you? Thank you for popping into the show. Let me read what Maya's statement is, and I want to read how I can respond to that last thing she said. She said, if anyone in a relationship wants to talk, she is fighting for the same thing he wants. Both of them should show up, though. Both people are scared of contention instead of believing for better. Either way, agreement and vulnerability is necessary. That's interesting. She said both people are scared of contention instead of believing for better. But do you think that him saying we're going to go to therapy, but we're going to wait to talk to the therapist, is him leaning more so on being scared of contention, or is it just on the side of wisdom? You know what I mean? Because I just had a group session with my Forever Friends Academy, right? The private group sessions that I have when I'm off air with you guys. And we talked about, basically, I remember I was talking to, it was a lot of men on that call, well, a majority of men. I won't say a lot of men, but it was probably about like 4 or 5 men on that call. And I had asked them, how does someone demonstrate respect to them? And I gave them a quote. And basically, I'll paraphrase it because I don't remember it in totality, but the quote was basically saying that people don't base their they base their facts on opinions. And so therefore it's very hard for when someone comes to provide them the truth, it's hard for them to be able to receive it. So anyway, I was saying to the men on there, would you consider someone, or your partner or your wife, or your wife or the woman that you're with, her ability to drop something, an opinion that she's so anchored in, be able to drop, or allow that monument that she's built, in her heart to believe to be true for the truth, basically. Can you, if someone having the capacity to basically receive the truth, appropriate themselves by that truth, and be able to kind of like let a strong opinion that they have kind of fall, would that be a demonstration of respect for you? And a lot of them said yes. And the reason why I'm bringing that up here is because I think what you're saying is a good example of one person bringing something that is truthful and based on principle versus another person bringing something that is an opinion, but even though it's an opinion, it's an optimistic opinion in this scenario. And on the call, we actually presented different scenarios so that we can kind of decipher, because everyone, I'm sure people have had experiences where it's hard, it's so Ooh, it's so hard and challenging sometimes when you believe something and that opinion is so strong that now that opinion is now fact, right? It is now fact to you because you have anchored yourself in that opinion so much. And this is so deep, right? Because I was telling them on the call that this is literally how indoctrination, right, of certain people belief systems like actually occur, where a person will have an opinion about something, it'll be so strong that now they don't even take it as just their personal preference or their personal opinion, then they place it on someone else and place it on groups of people, and then it becomes this whole thing. So I think in this scenario, you have the husband over here, which is taking not only the experience of what has been going on in the relationship, right? And then now trying to combat that with a principled thing, saying, okay, me and you together, we've been going through this. We both have been trying to come together and have a healthy conversation about this, but we are not able right now to put these pieces together and see each other, I guess, wholly, to be able to bring a resolve to this. And because I care about this relationship and I want to get to a proper resolve, let's go to therapy. Let's talk about it with someone who can provide us with the tools, because it is that principle: two is better than one, three is better than two. If you have, right, a group of people, and you're with the right group of people and you have the right space, that more clarity can come out of it. Now, as a wife, I totally understand what you mean of just having the optimism of like, let's keep talking about it until we get to a space. But one is more of an opinion and one is more of, okay, this is a principle that we, that is going to provide a certain, you know what I mean? So I love that you brought that up because I think that's a great example of that. But I don't think that he, in this, like, I can understand the wife in that statement that you said, where you said both people are scared of contention instead of believing for better. I think on the wife's end, I think that's more true on her end than his end. I think what he's providing is just wisdom based on what's been going on in the relationship, and the fact that the way that they're communicating is missing the mark. She said, I thought he said that they would avoid the subject until a neutral party was present because their communication will do more harm than good. She really wants to fix it. Yeah. No, well, yes, he's saying we're going to go to a therapist because our communication is doing more harm than good. Because we're not, I'm saying this to you, and she has a certain expectation. Like, let's put it like this. If you have one partner in a relationship that has a certain expectation of how another partner is supposed to show up, right? And the other partner is saying, I am showing up, but that's not the way that, in my mind, or how I either have been used to people showing up in my life, it's not registering, right? So they have a difference, maybe, I'm sure everybody heard this, so I'll use this as an example, where you talk about like the 5 love languages, and for one person it's, gifts, servicing in that way. And maybe another one, it's more so words of affirmation, right? Let's just say it's something like that. And no matter what each presents to the other, is just like they cannot get to, right, a space. So I don't think when he's bringing up to her that, no, we're going to therapy, right? To me, that automatically is letting you know that he's not scared. He's trying to find the best way to resolve the conflict without hey AJ, how are you? The best way in wisdom to try to solve the problem without compounding. So I don't think he's trying to avoid it, because avoiding it would me not already, right? Him already stating that we're and making the initiative to say we're going to go to therapy is the complete opposite of avoiding. I'm not avoiding. I want to actually double down on resolving this issue by using or putting the best, person as a resource to help guide us through this. So I don't see that he would be, scared of it. I can't. I don't know when she wrote that, but she said I'm not on her side. She changed her side. She missed the part. Okay, no problem. She said I missed that part. I'm not on her side. Renegade. Renege that. I can't. And she said, and she's just not getting that he's not the same as the other people she knows. Yeah, okay. Look at me. Well, I'm glad I did share all that because maybe somebody else listening. Hey, Jack, you did miss. We actually did two scenarios tonight, but I'll summarize this last one real quick if you want to chime in. Basically, it's a couple. They have an issue in their marriage, and they've been together for 12 years. The issue constantly keeps coming up. They're not able to, they've tried within their communication to come together to see eye to eye. So the husband initiates and says, okay, we're going to therapy. We got to go back to therapy because all that we've been trying, it's not working. And she's great. Once he says that, she feels seen, she feels heard. She's like, okay, he knows this is an issue that I'm, really concerned about and really appreciates him taking the initiative. However, he says to her that he would like to wait. He does not want to talk about it anymore. He wants to wait until they are in the presence of their therapist to be able to hash out this issue. That does not go over well with her. She's like, I'm not like you. I cannot, it's going to weigh on me internally. I hold things, I'm not like you. You can kind of go out. You can go out with your friends. You can, almost like act as everything's normal, even though there's an issue that we have. And so I feel like we can just, continue to talk about it and then talk about it even more as we go to the therapist. And he's like, no, I really do feel like the best thing for us to do is kind of like hold our peace because we're trying to communicate, but it's causing more damage than it is good. And I know that because they've worked with this therapist before, this is their therapist, that I know that when we go in front of, our therapist, she will be able to provide us with the tools to be able to hash this out, right? And I put in the scenario that, the therapy appointment was about, no more than 2 weeks out, right? So that is the scenario for tonight. I asked everyone, who do they more lean towards? Do you agree with the wife? Is it kind of unfair because she processes things differently from him? And, do you agree with her that they can just talk about it, continue to talk about it, and then talk about it more as it goes to the therapist? Or do you agree with the husband and feel like he's presenting her with, wisdom that, okay, we are going to deal with this. We're not avoiding it, but we should wait until we present it in front of our therapist to kind of hash this out, because just having that initiation and being in that environment, it's automatically going to switch the way that we go about dealing with this situation, because we know we have both made the initiative to now expose ourselves in front of another, right, third party who has the tools to help guide us through this issue. So let me know where you stand. So far I had Emily say she's with the husband. It makes sense. Like, you go to, in her own words, that's what you do. You go to a therapist to, discuss troubles and issues that you're having. And they help to kind of like, guide you in processing it out. So she's with the husband. Maya was with the wife, but I think she didn't hear something. So now she is also, I believe, with the husband. Yeah. So that's what we got so far. Ajax, so let me know. And Maya said, I think she said something else. Let me read that. She said, but I like getting to the root of the problem, I will say that I remember not wanting that, but really wanting the benefits of it. As the kids say, that's the Lulu. And takes you, but so far, yeah. But I'm glad that you missed the part that you missed, Maya, because I really appreciated the perspective that you brought, because, I think that's very true for a lot of women, right, who are in scenarios like that, where it's like, you're right. It's like I have the optimism that as we continue to talk about it, that we will stumble upon the solution. And you can see how this could become, not only just the issue for what it is, but then now when the husband brings maybe another route to go, right? And he's not trying to avoid it, but he's trying to deal with it in the best, the most optimal way, where if she combats him on that, right, and won't be, is not receptive of it, then that becomes a whole nother thing, right? If it becomes a whole other thing. But I totally understood what you wrote. It's like, okay, don't be fearful of the contention. Like, let's just keep talking about it, especially if, for, some women, the communication piece is more than just releasing, information. It is like almost healing for them. It's part of, the process. So I totally get that. And I like that you brought it up, because like I said, again, one is their reasoning is more so based on an emotional optimism, right, or emotional opinion, where what he's bringing in is more factual, it's more principle, and we always talk about it here. It's literally, I always say, what you can find with me that maybe you won't find somewhere else, is that I'm always going to bring it back to the principle, So just going back to that statement that I told you guys that I said to the young lady that I was speaking to recently, is like, do you think you're more exposed with just you and your time with God, or you and your, your intimate time? Or can you see your blind spot with just that? No. And I remember saying to her, the scripture says it's good. God said it is good for man not to be alone, and that's one of the primary essential reasons, because when we are, connected in relationship with others, then it's harder to hide. It's harder for us to hide, and they can see certain things that we can't see. Let me read some more. Okay, I see Ajax's response. Ajax said, I agree with the husband, okay, that they should go see their therapist, because a professional can tell you what things that you don't ever know or never thought about. Okay. Maya says, is that a relationship need for security that he can meet by doing something other than what she is asking? Like just a strategic assurance, maybe? Interesting question, Maya. Let me read that again. She said, and let me put that on so everybody can see that too. She said, is that a relationship need for security that he can meet by doing something other than what she's asking? Like just a strategic, I guess. Interesting. Strategic assurance. I think the part of, I'm trying to understand, are you saying like a relationship need for security for him that he can meet? Are you saying a relationship security for her? I'm just trying to understand the clarity in that one, so I can answer it in the right way. Ajax says a therapist can really help. When you go see a therapist, it's for, I think he's still typing. It's for a reason. Yeah. Maya says, especially knowing how much husbands really just want to please their wives too. That's a strong demonstration to wait for a solution. to be honest. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess, and I don't know if you heard my question, but I'm going to assume until you tell me otherwise that you're talking about it being a security need for him. And I guess so. I think, to your point, a lot of husbands do just want to, and I would say more beyond just pleasing their wife, even though that is most definitely, I think just making sure their household, is provided for on all levels, and definitely, their wife being in a peaceful state, a satisfied, a content state, gives them assurance that their provision as a husband is, being received, and they're doing the part and playing their position. So I guess in that way, but the part that I wanted to just get clarity on that statement, what you were saying other than doing what she's asking. So that's the part I didn't know if you were talking about him needing the security or her. But I think just having, and I was just watching a podcast today that I'm going to actually give homework for, or at least what I call it soul work for my group coaching clients, because I think it's a really good video to watch. And actually where I kind of extrapolated this, the second scenario from. They're a really good couple. You can check them out on YouTube, I think. And I hope I'm not pronouncing their names wrong, because it's a South African couple, and I think it's called the Makis. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but they are very open about talking about their relationship, which you don't find that oftentimes, because people don't want to feel like they're being exposed. And then of course when they do expose themselves, because social media is what it is, sometimes they don't want people to come and kind of tear down or try to cause wedges between them in what they find. But anyway, what Maya said was making me think about something that I heard that they spoke about on their podcast, which was, he was stating that as a husband, he tries to demonstrate and figure out what is the best way that he can provide, for his wife and his family. And oftentimes, his wife is a very strong personality, and to her own admission said that she realizes that she can be a bit controlling at times. And so oftentimes, when he's doing something, he realized that sometimes he just has to demonstrate, and he doesn't, tell her, because if he tries to, communicate and tell her, then she will then tell him what she thinks is the best way to do it. And for him as a husband, he wants to feel like she is confident and can trust in his direction or the ideas that he brings. And so he just wants to demonstrate it, to her. And it's helpful that when he does demonstrate it, that she then receives it, So I was just thinking about in this example, especially based on what Maya recently just wrote about it being a need for security rather than doing, the way that she wants to continue talking. I think it's not, I'm sure there's an aspect of that in there, but I think beyond that, I think it's what he feels like would be the wisest choice, that would bring, like, yeah, he can keep talking about it and kind of take a gamble. That's why I love what Maya brought up, because it brings that up. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we can be optimistic. We can be like, yeah, let's talk about it. We can embark on something. This possibly could happen. versus we've done this before. Like, we know that if we stand in front of, we sit down in front of this coach, we're going to get to business. You know what I mean? So it's like, do I go with, and then here's the thing, right? We can always use this as an example because sometimes that's what's happening in relationships, right? Where it's like, if he presents something else to her, she'll be like, I'm not being seen because you're not hearing me. Like, you're not hearing me, what I've presented that we should do. But it's like, no, I hear you, but you want me to dismiss this truthful thing, this fact, for the opinion, your optimism, that your opinion that is fueled by your optimism. And it's like, no, I do see you, but I do have a duty to present things principally. And I think, we both have a duty to remain open so that we can receive and go beyond what our opinions and our emotions are to see what the principal matter is, you know what I mean? Or let the principles reign over our choice making and decision making, right? So I'm getting some more stuff. Maya says, so outside of belaboring the conversation, what could the man do that would meet the needs being expressed? I usually assume that an urgency to talk about an issue is probably related to feelings of insecurity. Just a thought. This is blessing me. Oh, thank you, love. This is her feelings of insecurity that I'm talking about. Okay. I think what he can do is he can acknowledge that. I think that he can acknowledge that. I think that he can say, I understand what you're saying, and I don't want you to think that I am dismissing your feelings or your emotion, or that I am not acknowledging that this is going to bring about or trigger certain insecurities. I understand that. And I think what he could do in the interim, right? Because if what she said in the scenario is true, that, okay, you process it differently than I do. I kind of let it weigh in on me, internally it bothers me, and you seem like you can kind of just keep going on. What he can do, if we're not going to talk about it, he can, right, speak to her and communicate his love to her in other ways, right? And now this is going to take both of them. It's going to take both of them being open and receptive to this, because if we're not going to talk about it, it doesn't mean that I can't come in and give you lots of hugs. It doesn't mean I can't come in and, you know what I mean, nurture the relationship in other ways. But it is going to take her being open on the other end, right? In knowing that we're going to handle this issue, and let me be receptive of how he is, right? Communicating to me in other ways. And Maya, you definitely know this, that I always tell all my clients that everybody talks about the love languages and to know your number one primary love language and speak that to your partner, which is great. But the person who opens themselves to however God's love wants to show up to them gets the best, has the best advantage, because they're not going to dismiss it. And I always say that communication happens in so many different ways. And oftentimes we're used to just one way, being communicating verbally, but people communicate in their actions. People communicate. They used to communicate writing letters, and now maybe now it's text for us. But what I'm saying is that I will tell my couples, I'll literally have them assess, like, what is your pattern of communication? What is the main way that you do communicate with each other? And of course, most of them are like, yeah, we talk. That's what we do. So off the bat. And then I open up the door. I'm like, okay, let's this week just challenge to communicate in a different way. If you're not the person that kind of texts to your partner, text them. If you haven't written a letter in a long time, or maybe never, write a letter, right? Because when we start venturing out and actually being conscious in using other ways of communication, then all of these other, right, thoughts and feelings and things that would not necessarily come out in that main medium of communication that we're used to, other things start to come out, right? And that will lead to deeper connection. So I would say that's something that he can do. I don't think that it would help to still provide the necessary space to have to deal with the insecurity, right? Because we're still going to have to deal with that. And what's coming to my mind is the podcast that I was listening to earlier on. The wife had said something at the end of the podcast that I really liked, because they were exposing an issue that they were dealing with. And she said, it's important for everyone listening to this that we understand that we're going through something now, but marriage is a pie, right? And this is 25% of our pie that we're dealing with when it comes to this issue, but we still love each other. We still are committed. We're still in it for the long haul. And I think that's such an important statement, because oftentimes when that 25% of the issue that we're dealing with, right, in exactly what this wife in this scenario is saying, right, that 25% is going to consume her. Like, I cannot, I can't function. You know what I mean? It's going to bother me. So I'm saying that if he does, in your great question that you had of what can the man do to kind of like, maybe meet the need that she's saying in this situation without, right, dismissing the wisdom and the truth that he needs to apply and use in the relationship to guide, right, is he can use other modes of communication, right? And maybe he can even have a conversation and express that to her. Like, babe, we're not talking about this one issue that we're having, because we are using wisdom to speak to the therapist so that we do not harm each other. We do not use our weaponize our communication against each other. We are providing space so that we can focus on attacking whatever it is together as a team, right? Without letting the situation pressure us to attack each other. And yeah, we're not going to talk about it until we get into therapist, but I will be communicating my love to you in many other ways, right? And this is not the end all, of our marriage. It's just one area that we're working on. And I think that would provide room for her to at least have the opportunity to sit in the space and maybe deal with the challenge of appropriating the emotions and understanding that this is just an issue. It's not our whole, let's not let it consume our whole marriage, right? And then also present opportunity for him to communicate to her, right, in other ways, as well as her to become more, right, open to now looking out and seeing and acknowledging and honoring and appreciating maybe other ways that her husband communicates with her that is not the primary method that she is used to. So I would say that's something that he can do, and I think, great question, Maya, because I think for a lot of couples, and particularly husbands or men, it's hard for them to try to kind of like balance it out, right? Of, okay, I know what I'm saying is truthful. I know that this is useful and that it will cause, it's a better route for us to take, right? But now when I say this and I present this truth to her, she's going to say that she doesn't feel seen or heard because I'm saying that this is the better way, and for a lot of men, sometimes they don't know what to do. So oftentimes, either they just try to avoid it, So it's like that gentle balance of, okay, I know this is one, my position, to guide and to, present this in this way, but I also want to let my wife know that I'm also taking in what she's saying, and I'm acknowledging the sensitivities that she have around this. So how do I deal with that balance? And I think that's one of the ways, but I think, all of us, you can benefit. And this is not just relationship between like a husband and wife, but I say to, anyone, definitely if I'm in coaching, if they're in coaching with me, but just in casual conversations, like if you want to be the person who is open and to God speaking to you in as many mediums and modes as possible, right? Like you just don't know, and sometimes we can have so many expectations, in the way that we feel that people should show up for us in our life, and just expectations of how, the process of our life is unfolding. It's, us folks, right? We can put expectations in so many different areas, and unfortunately, it can block us from experiencing things that are beyond what we could have perceived, it unfold, our life unfolding in a certain way, or this person showing up for us in a certain way. And I think when it comes to this particular scenario, that's what, that would be the challenge for the wife in the scenarios of like, just okay, because he has presented a step towards a solution, and it would be an optimal, you know, way to kind of go about resolving the issue. And, so it's a matter of finding the nice, delicate balance in between the two. But it definitely is going to take reception from his wife as well to do that. So, but great question, Maya. Really, really good question. And I think, a lot of women probably find themselves, in that way. But I think the main difference in this scenario is that he has initiated actions for them to resolve the issue and go into therapy. Now, if this was a scenario where there was no, initiation made, then yeah, of course, let's try, let's keep talking about it. But even if they don't go to a therapist, if you do have someone in your circle that that you can speak to, I always say community is so important, especially when it comes to relationships and marriage. I know, listen, I'm sure a lot of y'all will have heard and will continue to hear where they say, your marriage, you keep it between you and your husband, you and your wife. Don't let everybody get in your business. And I understand that. But if you can build a community, if you have an inner circle of people who they are trustworthy, they will hear what you guys have to present and act as an outsider, but that is pulling from the wisdom of God and love and can help you, then I definitely think that it's helpful because sometimes, yeah, as a married couple, you don't know what to do, and then so if you go with that statement of just don't let anybody in your business, then it's like, okay, well, what do we do though, and then you don't have a lot of people who because they live by that, who will talk about their experiences to help, right, the people who are coming after them. And so therefore everyone's just kind of lost. I'm just going to be in a wedding in November, and I love, they had like a little short meeting with the wedding party, and I love what they said, that there's this wedding party are people who they honor and want in their life, and who they believe to have the capacity and the wherewithal that if they are going through something that they can present it to them. And that's really what wedding parties are supposed to be anyway. They're supposed to be the people who want the best for your marriage and will also be there to support it and be there to, help you guys hash out things that, if you invite them in, that they will be able to give you the truth with love, and help. support the sustaining of the marriage. So yeah, but that is the scenarios for tonight, guys. Great conversation. I particularly loved. The questions definitely. Maya dropped a lot of good perspectives and questions tonight that I think is really important, because I do think that people can find themselves, especially in that second scenario, a lot. So I appreciate that help to further facilitate the conversation. So thank you guys, as always, for popping in with me. So many, too many to name. So I appreciate you guys for coming in, always taking the time to, type the answers. I know that takes a while. So I appreciate you guys. You can be anywhere and you come in and you stop with me. So I appreciate you. Yes, you did. Hey, Jack, I appreciate you. You did. You made it for the last scenario, which I think was a good one. I'm glad that you came in on that one. But yeah, and Emily, thank you. Always have wonderful, just wonderful, holistic answers. So I appreciate it. All right, so I will be back on, hopefully, God willing, on Thursday. If you heard anything that you like and you were new, which I did see a couple of new people, so I'm happy. I'm excited about that. Definitely, if anything resonated with you, you can go to my YouTube channel, Forever Friends Academy is the name, and definitely subscribe. You will be notified when I'm on and get the full episodes, because they are only there. So have a good night, folks. Until next time, always remember to live to love freely until I speak to you guys again. All right. Bye.